right, guys. Good morning. All right. Quite a bit to share with you here today. So, please be patient. All right. I just want to make sure I walk through the entire thing and you're feeling confident and comfortable going into the final. All right. And so, let's get this going here. This is the night final, and it's about putting the essay together. All right. And to begin, this essay is really about the experience of putting this together. The key learning has already taken place, all right, with the learning checks, okay? Um, that's where you got your feedback. That's where you have the opportunity to respond. And hopefully, going into this, you all have taken those initial point sevens, which said, "Hey, here's some things that I need you to consider. Here are some things that I need you to fix." All right, you fixed those. All right, and you're now ready to go and put this all together. Okay, essentially, your body paragraphs are done because your three learning checks will represent each of those three body paragraphs. All right, so then really what remains is the process of putting together an introduction. Um, Taking those learning checks, turning those claim site clarify templates into body paragraphs, and then constructing a conclusion, and then putting that all together into one. All right. This document right here is going to serve as your drafting document where you put the pieces together. Um, and then you finally copy and paste them into the final document, and I'll get to that shortly. Okay, and so step one is writing the introduction, and there's a lot of verbiage here about introductions and their purpose and how you go about it. All right. Um, the one thing before we get going is I want you to know that basically your thesis statement's already done. We actually gave that to you all the way back in Learning Check 1 and 2. All right, where we said, hey, this is going to be your thesis statement for the entire or for the essay final at the end. All right. And we wanted you to know that going in. So you would pick one universal theme to use for all three learning checks. And some of you discovered that you didn't do that initially and you had to go back and make those changes. All right. And so your thesis statement is your universal theme plus the words connects and divides the people in night. Okay, here is my example. Fear, that's the universal theme I used, connects and divides the people in night. Okay, this will be the final sentence of your introduction. All right, generally speaking, that's where thesis statements should always go. So when in doubt, you're writing an essay for me or for another teacher. All right, you're done with your introduction. You know you have to have a thesis, or you're working on your introduction. You know you have to have a thesis statement there. The general agreement between reader and writer, teacher and student, is that your thesis statement is the final sentence of your introduction. I believe most of us already know that. Okay. So the thesis is already taken care of. So now what we have to do then is we have to put together a hook and we have to provide context. Okay. Um, and the hook, guys, I think the word hook is unfortunate. All right. I think we should call them frames probably. But hook is what we have, and hook is what we're going to go with. But the idea that I want you to think about for hooks is not a grab and go or catch them and leave them. It's about establishing the frame for what you want to say with your words and what you want to share through your thinking. It's where we initially set the stage, where we make that first impression. I have linked the hook resource here for you, all right, that gives you the 18 different types of hooks. And so you can use that to come up with your idea, all right. I have come up with an example that I'm going to share with you, all right. And so you can see what I did. Next is the context. This just provides that necessary information. It's that link between here is my initial idea, all right, with my theme and what I want to do with this, all right, and this is what's going to connect my reader to my thesis, which is really about the purpose and the focus of my piece. Okay, and again, please see my example, and I'll get to that in just a moment. And then finally, thesis statement, that's already done. All right, I want you to draft your introduction right here. Okay, you will eventually copy and paste it into this into the final essay draft. All right, and now that we're done talking about introduction, I want to take you to my example. So you will have this to look at as well. Okay. And so, as I said, there are three basic parts to an introduction. There's the hook, the context, and the thesis statement. All right. And I have color coded them for convenience. All right. And you're actually going to color code yours for the final draft. Don't worry about doing it in the practice or the drafting place. Worry about only doing that on the final draft. Okay. And so for my hook, I went with kind of a modified three-peat. All right. We don't know, we can't know, but when it comes, we will learn and we might discover we didn't want to know. All right. That is my hook. It's kind of setting up this idea that I want to use to lead into the idea of our facing fear. Okay. And here's the context. Remember, this is that necessary piece to put together the things that I want, all right, my reader to understand going into my essay. We all face fear in life, but unlike the people in night, we rarely face the fear they had to. In that, we are lucky in two ways. One, we don't have to face that kind of fear. Two, we don't have to face ourselves. The people in night in the Holocaust faced unimaginable fear. Worse, they had to face themselves in that unimaginable place where they learned some brutal truths about the world and themselves. So, with this, I am setting up what I want to say about fear and how it creates division and connection. And I know that I have to lead there. So as you're creating yours with your hook and with your context, you have to be thinking about your theme, and you have to be thinking about leading this into the idea of connection and division. Okay. And then finally, I just simply put my thesis statement, which now gives the focus and purpose for the rest of my essay. Fear connects and divides the people in night. And that's why in those body paragraphs, all right, you had to have at least one example of division. You had to have at least one example of connection. Okay. So going back, that's the introduction. There's an example for you to look at. Okay. And remember, as I said at the outset, this is just about going through the process of putting things together. All right. How effective your ultimately how effective your introduction is not going to hurt your grade as long as it's complete, as long as you have made an honest attempt at a hook, you've made an honest attempt at the context, and you provided your thesis statement. Okay, so this is about process, not about stress. Okay, and so as long as it's complete, that is what I'm looking for. Okay, again, the key learning that I wanted has already taken place with the learning checks. All right, so this is just about experience, kiddos. Don't stress this, por favor. Okay. And so going back to the body paragraphs for putting things together, um, step two, the body paragraphs. As I've already said, the bulk of this work's already done. This is about your three learning checks. All right, now it's about taking those claim site clarifies and turning them into coherent body paragraphs. All right, and this is what I think it simply comes down to. It has to sound okay. All right, I want us to learn to write with our ears. Okay, which means we have to learn to read our own writing to make sure that it makes sense. In some instances, you'll be able to just take the three that you've already done, the claim, the cite, and the clarify, put them together, and it will be a paragraph, right? The way to know, though, is to go back and read it. And if it doesn't really fit together, then we have to provide some connectors in the forms of transitions and connections and other things, all right? And so I'm going to leave that to you because I believe that's a skill that you have to learn, kiddos. All right. And so, really, it's learning to write with our ears. So please start making that transition for yourself, just personally, not just for this assignment. Okay. So, really quickly going to my example. Um, and remember, I just basically went back to the learning check example that I had given you. I copied and pasted all my stuff together, and this is what I came up with. All right. I have my claim. You have a claim. I have my cite. All right. And I have my clarify. That was all just the yellow, green, and blue was just my original putting everything together. As I read it, though, I felt like I needed a transition or a connection. All right, between my claim and my cite. So I added, they discovered this in chapter 2 in the cattle car of the train. All right, I'm not going to read this to you. You've already read it, hopefully, and I don't want to take the time to do that. Okay, so in your body paragraphs, remember, you're going to have three of them. I only put one in my example because I think that's all you needed to see for an example, but you'll have three here. Okay, you have to have the yellow, green, and blue. The red is where you are showing me, all right, like I read this side, but I think I needed a connector here, so I put one in. That doesn't mean you have to have red, but if I read it and it doesn't make sense to me, all right, I am not necessarily I'm not accepting fully that you actually went through and read it. Okay. So again, it's about the experience, folks. All right. No harm, no foul if you don't add the connectors. But I think ultimately, if we don't learn to read, to write with our ears, I think we'll never get to a place where we're very effective writers. Okay. So with that, and I know I'm taking a long time here, and I apologize for that. Okay, that will be That will be your body paragraphs, all right? And you will put them, you will copy and paste all of, don't just jump to the final and start copying and pasting there. Put them here first, all right? Make sure everything fits the way you want so you're ready to basically lift it and place it, all right, in the final, and there's very little work that remains, okay? Finally, you're going to do your conclusion, okay? And again, this is about the experience, all right? And so this is where you have a chance to bring that back things full circle. I've tried to reiterate and reinforce this all year long with you in terms of your work and your writing, okay? That it's not an effective hook if you don't rehook, all right? It's just something that we threw out there to throw out there. We never really had an idea in mind. So it's really about thinking 360 degrees when we go to write a piece, all right? We're going to start with that 180 with the introduction, and we're going to come back full circle with another 180 by bringing it back, all right, with our rehook, okay? Sometimes I think when I say rehook, you think I mean like repeat your words, all right? You don't have to do that. It's going back to the idea of your hook, all right? And then finally, after the hook, this is where you add your final words of wisdom. You make a last impression, okay? You don't need to add, you shouldn't add new information. You shouldn't just simply summarize what you've said. You've already said it. This is where we have a chance to say something impactful about our big idea. It's where we get to leave our reader with an impression, and where we get to kind of show that, like, we had something to say here. All right. So let's go to my example and see what I did. All right. So, if you remember up here, I talked about our not wanting to know and our being lucky that we don't have to face such situations. Okay, and so I go back to this idea kind of ignorance. No, I don't say ignorance. That's really what I'm talking about. All right, we don't want to know, and if we are lucky, we never will. We weren't meant to face such fear. We weren't meant to face such choices. So I didn't go exactly back to the three-peat, but I did go back to the big idea that we are lucky in our ignorance, okay? Because we typically don't have to face such situations that the folks in the Holocaust did, all right? And then I end with some final words, okay? That kind of what I hope bring everything together. And this is really about Ellie's story. And so I began with that. Ellie's story teaches us that, but we have to listen to learn so we make sure we never put humanity in that place again. Never again. All right. And so if we read Ellie's story and we don't learn from Ellie's story doesn't mean anything. We give it meaning when we listen and we learn. And that's what I wanted to impart there. That's what I wanted to show there. Okay. So again, it's about practicing, because really that's what this is, bringing things back full circle and then having something to say at the end, okay, that kind of wraps it up, that leaves the reader with the final impression. That is how I want you approaching conclusions now and forever, mis chicos, okay? So with that, this is getting really long here and I apologize for that, but again, there's a lot to do. So you will do all the initial work here. You'll draft your introduction, your body paragraphs, which remember are just simply copying and pasting from the learning checks. You will draft your conclusion here. Once you are done with that, okay, you will come here to the final document and you will follow these task instructions. Please copy and paste your work from Night Final, putting the essay together. That's that document that I just went over and asked you to please do your draft work with first, okay? Put your introduction, copy and paste your introduction here. Please proofread and correct for mistakes, all right, as best you can. As I said earlier, no blue or red squiggly marks underneath. That's just telling me that you're being lazy, and I'm sorry to say that. But when we see the docs that Google Docs is saying, hey, pay attention here, writer, there's something wrong here, we have to pay attention to it. So please do. Fix it if you can, ignore it if you can't, all right? Or if you have to know and I'm happy to help, ask me to how to help you to fix it, okay? Um, body pair, and then please highlight with the key, all right? So I expect to see your introduction with a yellow hook, green context, and a blue thesis statement. Put your 3 body paragraphs here, do the same, all right? Put your conclusion here, do the same. Please proofread one final time, and then when you're ready, hit the share or the submit button. All right. And so with that, guys, I'm going to end this, but I'm going to take you back where we started. Again, full circle. This is about the experience of putting a final essay together, thinking about the parts and pieces and how they all work. All right. That is what I'm looking for here. This is about completion. The other learning has already taken place with the learning checks. All right. So hopefully this is not too overwhelming. Hopefully it's fairly clear. All right. If it's not, please reach out and I will give it another shot at clarifying it. All right. Good luck on this. Do your best and embrace the experience. That's what the intent is. Okay. All right. Peace out.